Welcome to Career High, where we dive deep into school district scandals. Just kidding. Uh, Career High spotlights visionary educational leaders who are heading up the charge in career connected learning. I'm your host, Jeremy Smith, the co founder and CEO of Pegasix, an entirely new kind of higher ed that empowers students to start their career 3 years early and $100,000 ahead of college grads. But more importantly, my guest today is Mitch Gross, and Mitch is the principal of Iowa City West High School in Des Moines, Iowa. Just kidding. Iowa City. So, Mitch, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks, Jeremy, for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, let's just hop right into it. Tell me a little bit more about yourself as well as Iowa City West.
Yeah, will be my 23rd year at Iowa City West High School. 15 years of that was spent as a teacher. I taught American government and AP US history. And then I spent 2 years as an assistant principal in the junior high that feeds into Iowa City West High School. And then this is my 6th year as principal.
You've had the teacher role at the school, administrative role at the school, administrative role at the middle school that feeds into it. So you've kind of have all perspectives of the system.
Yeah, I'd hope so. And teaching was a second career for me. I spent the first 7 years of my professional life and working in politics and government at the state and national level. So this was a nice landing pad for me. And I've only been at West High School, or again, the school that feeds into us. And so I'm kind of a lifer here. And I do think it's very important that I spent the bulk of my career as a teacher. I just really feel that administrators need to understand that classroom experience. And having said that, my teaching career ended before COVID. So I think, there's kind of a pre-COVID and post-COVID teaching world as well. So unfortunately, I can't relate with my colleagues from that standpoint, but I was in the trenches with them for 15 years.
Gotcha. What are some of the biggest differences sort of pre-COVID and post-COVID?
Yeah, I think student attention span, number one. I think, and I say this as someone who I have 3 children and I kept my own children online for a year based on the information that I had. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have sent them into the building. And I think we should have done that, but I also feel we needed to be safe and, we needed to be vaccinated and all of that. But it did a lot of damage to kids and the adults that work in the building as well. So it's really, I would say last year was the first year where things started feeling quote unquote normal again.
Right.
And then this year it's been really, really I feel like we're in a good spot where it feels like, at least from a behavior standpoint, we really haven't lost a step. I think there are still going to be academic shortcomings that, we'll feel for an entire generation.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting too, because I found as much as because they talk about the kind of the attendance issues, and as much as it's the kids, the adults have just become super lax. I don't mean the teachers, I mean the parents have become super lax, whereas they're just, I hear parents talk sometimes and they're like, well, I mean, there's no school on Friday, so, I don't know if they need to go on Thursday. And I just, pre-COVID, no one ever would have said something crazy like that. It's like, what does that have to do with it? The Fridays are like, you still have to go to school Thursday. And then, my kids, I have a 14 and 16-year-old, like, well, none of my friends are going into, school tomorrow because it's a full moon tonight or some absurd thing. And I'm like, what? Like, what's happened to people? Like, how could parents allow this? But there's just something clicked, not in a good way, with parents where they've just become super permissive from an attendance perspective or a missing, lack of attendance.
I think there's validity to that. I think it's getting better. Chronic absenteeism plagued, I think, every district across the country. I think students and families who were already marginalized or who already had significant institutional barriers, those were exacerbated during COVID. So it's not surprising that those issues came to head. But I think all of us, I should say this, I was the president of the teachers union before I went into admin. So I'm about as a teacher as they come, but I say this, we've had to talk about, attendance with teachers, or I think the mentality, because we were so big on people taking care of themselves, and we should be, but I think we've got to a point where now students and teachers and staff, I should say, sometimes they don't come to school just when they don't feel good versus being sick. And there's a difference. You still have to come to work or school when you don't feel well.
Right.
We don't want you when you're sick, when you're contagious, but it's life doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And I think we're gradually getting into that. And I have as I said, 3 children myself. 2 are in college and one as a junior in high school, and just trying to get them into that realm of post-COVID expectations and
Yes,
get ready for the workforce. And so there's there's
exactly.
definitely been a shift for sure.
No, no, that is true. Yeah, it's we talk about like not feeling well versus being ill, and same thing. I say I'm sure you've said the similar thing with sports. It's like, are you hurt or are you injured?
Yeah.
Because they're different. If you're hurt, get up, maybe do a little lap and then get back out there. If you're injured, okay, then we'll get the trainer and
Right.
cart you off the field, but otherwise get up. And it's a
Yeah.
similar thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is an interesting mind shift that everybody's
Yeah.
had.
But as far as Iowa City West High School, we have 1,600 students. We're very proud of the work we do here. We have been 4 years in a row that U.S. News and World Report #1 high school in Iowa, and one of the
Really?
top high schools in the country. Yeah, and what's really impressive, um, I have yet to find a single comprehensive high school in the country that is more diverse than we are, that is ranked higher than we are. We are a majority school. We are 46% white. We have a 32% poverty rate. But we are,
That's
I think our
incredible.
school showcases, that diversity is a strength, and really our high school is a kind of a microcosm of the world. So we kind of say the world is at West High School. We speak 17 languages here. Um, so we're very, very proud of kind of what we have going on as an institution.
What's the most other than English, what's the most popular language in,
Yeah, so our four, our four big ones are Arabic, French, Spanish, and Swahili. So
got
those are
it.
the
Oh,
four.
I didn't see that last one coming. That gave me and
Yeah.
Swahili.
Yeah, we are about 26% uh, Black students. So we
Yeah.
are, and of that subset of students, we have, I guess I don't have the breakdown, but a significant number of those students are first generation African students, mostly from Congo, several students from Ethiopia, several students from Kenya, and then the largest group of students from Africa are Sudanese students who are obviously Arabic speakers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's wow. Although I say, if I were the principal, I would ban French because I don't think they pronounce enough of the consonants in their words, and that really bothers me.
Well, that's interesting that you say that. I'm actually the son of a French citizen. So
Oh, no.
if you would have told me that I'd be speaking French on a daily basis in Iowa City, Iowa, I would have never believed it. Because of our Congolese population and our West African population. In fact, I actually taught a class for the University of Iowa this past summer in Senegal. And yeah,
Wow.
I speak French on a daily basis with students and families. And but it is a tough one when it comes to spelling. Yeah.
It is. That's why I like German. I can't speak German. That's why I like German. Just every single consonant is
Yeah.
pronounced and hard. Like they don't
Yeah.
they don't let up on their consonants. I like it. So tell me a little bit about you're kind of from a career connected learning perspective. What does that look like at West?
Yeah, and I think it's evolving, for sure. I think as we keep talking about the pandemic, I think the pandemic also really opened people's eyes on college and college education, the value of those degrees and the value of non-traditional baccalaureate degrees. We have a very strong community college system in Iowa. And one of the best in the country is right here in our community of Iowa City, and obviously we're also the home of the University of Iowa. So we have both types of institutions, and then we also, as I was saying, with very strong trades programs. So pretty significant home building industry. So I think we've, as a school, have really worked hard to showcase and to show students all the avenues that are out there, that there's not just a traditional way. Now, having said that, I will say, because we are the home of the University of Iowa, we have a significant proportion of students who are affiliated through their parents with the University of Iowa. So that, those families are pretty traditional from, what they expect and what they think students need to do. But I think where even those families have kind of seen some different things is, for example, students doing internships. We are been much more engaged and involved of hooking students up with uh, internship opportunities at the high school level. Now they can even get credit for those internships as well. And so we work really hard at doing that and trying to match interests up with students, just so they can say, hey, maybe I'm thinking of healthcare. Actually, right next to our campus is a nursing facility. So we have a pretty good partnership with that institution. Am I interested in medicine? Let's try 6 weeks. Working at the nursing home.
And how do you do that? Although I mean, you were just starting to touch on it, but in terms of enabling students to explore what it is they might be interested in, do you have any tools that orients them or helps expose them to things or their,
Yeah, we
certain
use, we
experience.
utilize Zillow, which is, a national program, that kinda, yeah, has mixed results, but I think that's one thing
Yeah.
that we
Wait,
do.
Zillow, the
Otherwise,
real estate? The real estate?
no, it's, it sounds similar.
Uh, it
I'd
does?
have to, I don't know, yeah, how you spell it. I think it's XYCELLO or something like
Oh,
that.
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
Um, but we also have a career counselor on staff, and that person works very hard. We're also literally just down 2 miles down the road, from the University of Iowa Hospital and Clinics, which is a huge boon for, our campus and our students. So again, students who are, interested in healthcare, there's a lot of opportunities for, summer research, summer, internships, and sometimes during the school year as well. We also, as I mentioned, the community college, we have a pretty significant partnership with our community college as well. So students are able to take dual credit courses, and a lot of those courses are kind of career exploration, courses. So, for example, each year I'm a guest speaker at the Intro to Education class. So, if students think, hey, I want to maybe go into the field of education,
Right.
we don't offer that at the high school level, but we do offer it, jointly with the community college, and then students will take that, there. And it's, auto trades, or mechanics, welding. So it varies and ranges from, also forensic science to pre-law. So it really does cover,
Yeah.
a lot of the.
That's great. And, it's interesting because I mean, obviously it's a lot of the motivation I had behind Pegasus was, around focusing on careers at the post-secondary level. But what's interesting is, I think the CTE movement has been great, that it's kind of bringing the blue collar jobs sort of out of the shadows and say, "Hey, look, this is perfectly reputable career paths, and by the way, fairly high paying now." And but then what has happened is then you have all of the attention on, career readiness. If we're going to do career readiness, it's for the blue collar jobs, for the trades. But then if you're going to pursue a white collar job, then you go purely academic route into universities. And, I always say, well, no, the white collar jobs are trades too. Anything that is a skill you get paid for, in my mind, is a trade. Whether it's physical or not is just, a feature, but it's not what defines a trade. It's like if you have a skill and you're getting paid for it, that's a trade. And so I love hearing when you're talking about, whether it's forensic science or law, that there's also the kind of white collar career paths that you're focusing on too, in terms of the career connected learning opportunities. Cause that's, you know, I think that my vision of the future, is a verticalized post-secondary model, and, that everybody, when they graduate high school, they go to a trade school. It's just, is it a blue collar trade school or a white collar trade school? And then which career path under, one of those two umbrellas. But, everyone should get prepared for their careers. And so I love that you guys have kind of are, touching on both sides, if you will.
Yeah, and actually what you just described is very, very, similar to the French system. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to look at the
Oh,
French. I mean, they take a exam called the baccalaureate, and it kind of siphons you off into 2 different, uh, fields, and, one kind of is blue collar, one is white collar, and it's kind of where you end up is where you end up. And, I think a difference in France and the United States is because, still their blue collar jobs are still viewed, very, very well, and,
right.
there's not the social stigma,
Yeah.
and the benefits are still very strong, and that. So I think, we're in Iowa City, we are statistically one of the most educated communities in the whole country. And when I say that, it's just by percentage of residents with a BA or higher. So we're, the expectation and the normal path here is to do the traditional, route. But as I said, that has started to wane, and it was even
Yeah.
waning before,
Yeah.
um, COVID, just because of the cost. I taught AP US history, and each year I would argue a significant more of my students, who were seniors, were going the community college route just because of
Right.
debt, and
Yeah.
weren't for sure if they wanted, um, to do. And then, I think the other elephant in the room now is just AI and how that will
Mhm.
impact probably more white collar jobs
Yeah.
than blue collar jobs.
Yeah. No, no, I mean, it's interesting you say that too about the kind of the shift in mindset because, I had the idea for Pegasus and the career accelerator category that we're creating. And I had the idea 15 years ago. But as I talked to people, yeah, they thought college was too expensive even back then. But 100% of people were like, "No, no, no, you gotta go to college. Like, you have to. Like, that's no, and it's worth it, and it's good." But then, like you said, a little bit before COVID, but especially when COVID hit, I mean, not the moment COVID hit, but over the course of, the a couple of years of COVID, there was just this huge shift in mindset with a ton of parents and students and employers saying, yeah, I mean, the cost is even worse, but putting that aside, I don't know that college is doing for us anymore what it did. And more, yeah, drumbeats kind of only gotten louder over the last couple of years, and people have been wanting alternatives to college, and that's when I said, okay, all right, now maybe I dust off the idea that I put on the shelf because it seems like now a lot of people are coming over to the I don't know about college. Let's try something else, something that's sort of career focused and experiential and, it's faster and more affordable. And I was like, "All right, that was the idea. So let's try this." So yeah, no, I've seen the same sort of overall trends. Um, what do you think is the most well, actually, let me ask this question first, which is how do you balance sort of college prep and career connected learning?
Yeah, I think that is actually a really good question. As I said, we're a very, very academically rigorous high school. We send a significant number of kids to the Ivies and top 20 schools, and so there is that prescribed curriculum that students need to do.
Yeah.
We're still a traditional schedule, but we have a 7 period day, so that's why it's problematic because you have your 4 core areas, and then if you add a world language, there's 5 periods, and if you add any type of fine arts extracurricular, there's 6 periods.
Right.
But then that leaves you with 1 period to do an internship or to take another class. So um, in some ways, it's a good problem to have because students have more choices than slots. But it often will be a cost benefit kind of rationale process of do I do this or do I do this? That's what we've tried to really leverage summer as much as we can to really have students, trying to get connected with different internships and things in the summer. But also, as I did say earlier, we do have several 4 credit career opportunities that students can utilize as well if they so desire
That's great.
to do that. One of the interesting things we have in our district, it's called Student Build a House. For each year, our students literally build a house for Habitat for Humanity. Those students are getting just unbelievable
Oh,
skills
yeah.
of that will be very, very lucrative for them in future. And then you just mentioned this, and Iowa is a state that is hemorrhaging from a population standpoint, and so the trades jobs, as you said, they are very shorted from a worker standpoint, but then the jobs are they are starting in 6 figures, and so
Right.
it is a very, very lucrative deal. A growing number of students, I should say, that are entering or choosing to enter into trades just because they can not only start at high salaries, but I think can build equity quickly into companies that are that are losing workers so quickly. For example, in our local area, HVAC is just the demand for HVAC workers is significant. And I'm not sure where you're located, but in Iowa, where we have extreme winters and extreme summers, it's a continual
Yeah.
need for those types of individuals.
No, it's the same here. I'm in Kansas City, not too far from you,
Oh,
and,
okay.
same sort of things. Our winters probably aren't as extreme, but they're cold enough that you need your
Yeah.
HVAC working. What would you say are some of the most important elements of the career connected learning programs? When you talk about internships, yeah, probably, and some of the summer opportunities.
Yeah, I think one thing we're exploring, and since you're from Kansas City, my wife is from Kansas City, and one of the things I've been really impressed is what I'm not sure what district you're part of, but what Olathe has done with its career kind of academies, and I think that's something we've been exploring. And 2 of her good friends are teachers, and it was very just this past summer they were telling me kind of about it, and I think there's a lot of merit to a program like that where we have 3 comprehensive high schools in our district, and I think it would make sense at some point to maybe deem one is going to be really focused on this, deem this one on this, and
Right.
deem on this. And I think I think there are certain elements and certain industries and certain disciplines that do warrant kids kind of focusing on and locking in on. We're not quite there yet. We
Yeah.
did just start at the district level what's called the Dream Accelerator. So we're having all ninth grade students go. It's through junior achievement, but it is but it's a pretty robust process where students at the ninth grade level can kind of really do an inventory of interests and then being connected with potential opportunities, connected with stakeholders and key figures in those industries locally to try to get that all built. So and that's just opened up this year. So I think as a district, we're recognizing the need for that. Again, I think Iowa City has been slow to it because we've been such a an academically based community because we're a university town. But
Yeah.
as I mentioned before, the state of Iowa is kind of ahead of us because it is kind of interesting. I will share this that, as I said, we've been the U.S. News and World Report number one high school in Iowa for 4 years in a row. According to the state of Iowa, we are not the number one high school.
Oh,
And one of the things we get dinged is some of our career readiness and kind of
interesting.
CTE things, just because we have so many students kind of going the traditional route.
Right.
Now, if I were to, and I'm not going to mention it, but if I were to mention what the state of Iowa would say is number one high school, and if a family was looking at both high schools, which one do I want to move to and have my kid go to? I think the
Right.
choice would be very obvious.
Right.
So I don't want to say a disproportionate amount of influence is being put on CTE and career ed, but Iowa's had to just because of the population drain, and then our community is just probably a little late to the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. What would you say are kind of the most difficult elements of the career connected learning programs? One, you talked about just not enough time in the day, not enough periods, but what are maybe one or two other things that are really
Yeah,
difficult
I
to
think the
manage?
other is just the the curriculum itself is just, I don't want to say it's archaic, but it hasn't been probably really looked at to
Right.
be flexible to allow students to do more things like that. So, for example, in Iowa, all students have to have algebra 2 to graduate high school.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's necessary, to be
Right.
honest.
Right. Yeah.
And I
That
think a
that and
lot of schools,
calligraphy.
yeah, yeah, we've moved on from that. But just so there's a lot of sit time for students who would be better served by being out in the community, doing an internship or a job shadow,
Yeah.
something along those lines. And again, that's a state statute, so we don't have a lot of flexibility on that.
Yeah.
But for example, one thing we did try to do, we created a class locally in our district called geometry and construction, which did allow students to get the geometry credit plus, try to learn
Right.
trades and how to make math and geometry relevant to a profession. I just think that is the adherence to the traditional kind of expectation of what a high school curriculum looks like, and to get into these traditional schools, that's still where the expectation is holding people at.
Yeah. No, that makes sense because it is. I mean, just to get people to kind of recalibrate their mental model of what a good education
Right.
is probably the toughest thing. It just, I mean, in general, and it makes sense in the context you're talking about because it's like, no, you have to take algebra 2, or you have to learn how to write in cursive. Yeah, and you like, well, why? And it's like, well, just because that's what an education is. It's like, why do you have to drink water to not be thirsty? That's just how it is. And it's like, well, it's like, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if you hear what you're saying.
Right.
And it is. It's just once something gets entrenched for long enough, people just they stop questioning it. And when someone questions it, they get very defensive. And they don't even know why they're getting defensive. They just are because this is
Yep.
how it's been. And so this is how it should be.
I think one area where I probably fall on that piece, I still think it is incredibly important that students learn how to think and how to be, and even more so, yeah, just I think what's going on in the world today, so that this is where we really do kind of got to get them from a history and government teacher. I understand the world's moving to a STEM world and AI world and all that, but I also, there's still the humanity of civilization that has got to be taught
Yeah.
and focused on and honed in on. And so I just,
Yeah.
think finding all those different sweet spots is kind of what the challenge is right now with 21st century secondary education.
Yeah, and it's true, and and one of the things that I always say because I call it kind of the the 3 virtues, which is, when I look at education, I kinda zoom out and say, "Okay, I always like to think of things from a first principles perspective. Principles, PLES, not
Yes.
um, and, which is so I'm like, "Okay, let's go zoom way out, and, what is it we're all trying to do here?" It's like, "Okay, all of us want to create a better society." Right? Now, what that means to certain people means different things, but regardless of the specifics of what it means, all of us want to create a better society. And so I go, okay, with that, a critical component to that, the most important component of that is a, productive, thoughtful, thriving citizenry, right? The members of society. And again, what each of those things might mean, productive or thoughtful or thriving, again, can differ, but kind of those three virtues um, really is the core of what as a society we should be thinking of. And so then it's like, okay, so from an educational perspective, and I think sometimes people to put too much on the educational institutions to achieve all those goals. And it's like, okay, well, we need those three things. So, education, what are you doing to take care of all three of those things? Right. And I think that it doesn't make sense, because there's family, there's friends, there's clubs, and now there's even more things. Like when I think about learning, and when I think about, say, the liberal arts, everything I know about liberal arts, or the subject areas that make up the liberal arts, I learned for not at college really even, but I learned in high school, but even more so, I've learned the reading through podcasts and, or books on tape or what have you, but podcasts. And these are things, and now they have online, like Udemy and Coursera and those places where, $10 a month or $15 a month. And there are just so many places now that you can get that knowledge and get it in maybe even a better way, that to try to cram everything into the traditional education system, I think is doing a disservice to the traditional education system, to the education system and to everybody. Because, I know probably more about the Gilded Age than 99% of Americans, which is not something I'm bragging about because who cares about the Gilded Age? But I do. And I learned all of that outside of a school context. All that was from podcasts and reading books. That's and a movie here, a documentary here or there. And it just, it goes to show it doesn't have to be inside the walls of an institution necessarily for some of these things. And if you can like accept that and make that part of the overall, you know, enlightening of the mind, then that takes a lot of weight off of the formal educational institutions and lets them do more in the areas that we should have them focus on, rather than have them try to cover everything. And it's like, well, then they can't do a great job if they're covering everything because no one or nothing would be able to.
Well, if you want me to get on my soapbox,
I
then I would
do.
even say
Please.
to add on to that, it is where school has become the safety net that probably government or society should have become. So when you say what to cover, what to focus on, obviously teachers are educators and we are all educators and we're trying to teach and learn, but we are also social workers and therapists and childcare providers and all these things that have fallen upon the school. Again, I think, bring up the pandemic, we saw how valuable, that institution is or was. And, I would love to be in a society where those things are covered in a different avenue and realm so that
Exactly.
we actually could focus and work on, um, education. That's why one of my go-tos, and this wouldn't work everywhere, but I'm enthralled with the Finnish system of education, the way the Finns do it. So they have, first of all, teachers are one of the highest paid professions.
Yep.
So you're getting the best and the brightest. Again, as an AP US history teacher, I would always ask my seniors, how many of you are interested in being teachers? Very, very few hands would come up. I said, what if you could start at 75,000? Hands go up. And so it's just, so get that piece. But, in the Finnish system, there's a 4-day school day, or 4-day a week school day, but the 5th day is all about interventions. And there's 2 teachers in every classroom. So someone's instructing, someone's intervening. And it is really focused on the teaching and the learning.
Yeah.
I would argue a little bit because the way the Finnish governmental system is set up, um, families aren't worried about healthcare.
Right.
They're not worried about childcare.
Yeah.
So it's just so those things don't fall upon the school.
Yeah, it is. It's too much. It is too much. Like everything. It just the more things as I hear people complain, whether in person or on TV or wherever, I just they heap more and more and more on the schools, and I'm like, what are you doing? you seem to have outsourced all your
Yeah.
responsibilities to the school. Like, what are you here for? As a parent or a congressman or a pastor or whatever it is, like it seems just the school's responsible for everything, and it is not sustainable to do it that way, and it just doesn't make sense. And yeah, so that is a hobby horse of mine that I get on and talk about as well because it's just like, look, the society is formed of more than just schools. And so there have to be more people and organizations delivering things in one of those three areas, right? Where you're helping your citizens learn to be more productive or more thoughtful or, thriving. Um, but you can't just go, well, why is it, what's wrong with the elementary schools? Why aren't they doing this? Or the high schools? It's like, holy cow, the job is to educate, right? So let them educate. And the other things we need to figure out how to take care of. And even some of the education, like I said, still doesn't have to fall on the schools because there are now new ways to get that education, maybe even in better ways.
Right.
Just given time and place and all of that. So
The way in which we deliver instruction hasn't drastically changed as the times and the technology and the demands have. So we're, obviously we're behind. And I don't think that's just an American problem. It's just, even on a global standpoint. As I said, I was in Senegal this past summer teaching a class and, was very surprised of how similar actually, the education system was in this West African country.
right.
I had expected it just to be completely different. Now, the facilities were completely different and what the students
Yeah.
were dealing with. But as far as the structure and the instruction, very similar.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, I am surprised by that, especially because, like you said, in some of the countries in Europe, it can be pretty different. So I'm surprised in Senegal. I would think they'd be more on the metric system, so to speak, where they would be doing it the way they do in Europe, and not so much maybe the way that we do in America. So that's interesting. Wouldn't have realized that. All right, fantastic. Well, Mitch, I wanted to thank you very much for joining me on Career High today. Loved your perspective, your passion, and what you're doing at your school because it is impressive. Number one school in Iowa. I know depends who you ask, but I think that U.S. News and World Report's a pretty good one to ask. So that's incredibly impressive. And again, thank you for joining me.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Yep, absolutely. You too.